Welcome to another episode of Surgeons' Lives. I'm your host, John Monson. My guest today is Dr. Herb Chen, who's the chairman in the Department of Surgery in the University of Alabama, where he has been for almost 10 years now. He moved there from Madison, Wisconsin, where he had developed an international reputation in the field of neuroendocrine surgery. He has a particular passion for the use of radioimmunoguided detection of the parathyroid gland, and of course is extremely accomplished in the molecular biology of neuroendocrine tumors. Outside of his clinical and academic research activities, he's equally well known for developing a firm interest in mentorship for career development, as well as diversity and inclusion. In my experience of Herb, he's worryingly well organized, and every minute of every day appears, at least to the outsider, to be spoken for. I'm hoping that we'll perhaps cast a little light on the rest of his life and see what he has to say about work-life balance. Without further ado, let's go and talk to Herb Chen. I'm John Monson, and this is Surgeons' Lives. So, Herb, well, thank you so much for spending some of your Monday morning chatting to me on a topic that is unquestionably not as important as saving lives and finding the cure for cancer, but sometimes a little break every now and then helps.
Totally agree.
So I've released, I think, about 20 plus of these now, and I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to see any, but we obviously spend some time talking about life and career in one thing or another. But the subtitle of this Surgeons' Lives podcast is Stuff That Matters, which hopefully allows us the opportunity to wander into stuff other than the CV, which we can find on Google. And so normally what I ask people to do, and I'll ask you to do it as well, as if you could give us take us on a short life journey, starting with the words "I was born in," not a date, a location.
Not a date and location?
Not a date, but the location. In other
Location,
words.
gotcha. So I was born in Staten Island, New York.
Okay.
And yeah, and my dad was an orthopedic resident at the time, and he was training in New York City, and they had rotating years where he would spend a year at different hospitals. So they had us jumping around a bit. And then eventually, when I was 5 years old, we moved to central Wisconsin, where I spent all of my childhood until I went to college.
So would you consider yourself a Midwesterner or a New Yorker?
I would consider myself a Midwesterner because that's where I spent the majority of the time. So grew up in central Wisconsin, and then I hopped around a whole bunch of places since then.
But I mean, you landed again in the Midwest in Madison for a goodly number of years. So you didn't travel too far.
No, so it's an interesting story is that when I completed all my training and was looking for a job, I had met my wife, Harriet, in North Carolina. She's a native North Carolinian, and um, she visited me in Wisconsin where the temperature did not get above zero the whole time we were there. And she said, if we ever get married, I just want to let you know right now, we are never moving to Wisconsin. And I said, all right, that's fine. I know, like, I had lived so many exciting places. I actually didn't think I would live in Wisconsin. But, when I was looking for a job when I finished, the I met Bing Rickers, who was the chair there. And I mean, he was a fantastic leader. He had a fantastic job for me, and it was just the right job. And my wife met with Bing, and Bing convinced her this would be the right move for our family. And so we moved back to Wisconsin, where I was on the faculty for 15 years, and we had a great 15 years there. Our kids were raised there, and they went to school there. I mean, it was like a great environment. So and it was great for me to return back to Wisconsin for those number of years because I still had a lot of friends there and stuff. So that was nice.
To me, I was greatly impressed by the fact that she started the conversation by saying, "If we ever get married."
Well, we had just started dating,
Yeah.
so good qualification on the statement.
She was making it clear that it wasn't a done deal, you know.
No, it was definitely not a done deal. So, but it worked out. So it was good.
So your early grounding was Duke and Hopkins.
Yeah, so I went to Stanford for undergrad, and then I went all the way to North Carolina to Duke, where I met my wife Harriet, and then from there went to Baltimore at Hopkins for 8 years, and then Madison, Wisconsin for 15.
And were you always going to be a surgeon, or how did that come about? What were
So
your early influences?
yeah, so my dad being an orthopedic surgeon in practice, and I grew up in a small rural town called Marshfield, which is about 15,000 people in central Wisconsin, but about 400 to 500 physicians there at a multi-specialty clinic. So many of my parents' friends were physicians. So I was around them my entire career, most of them surgeons. So I got exposed to surgery very early, got to go observe surgery, got to I would occasionally, make rounds with my dad and stuff. So, and I was the eldest son, and so I pretty much knew that I wanted to do medicine, and I pretty much knew I wanted to be a surgeon. I had at first thought I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon like my dad, but it. Um, and I got exposed when I got exposed to general surgery as a medical student. That's when I really decided that general surgery was the field for me. And then specifically, I got into endocrine surgery when I was a resident, and that clinched it there.
So that shift to endocrine, or not shift, but emphasis on endocrine, allows me the chance to ask you about some of your mentors in training. We all have mentors. Were you, I know one of your things, if you like, is to be intentional about seeking mentors. That's one of the things that you teach. Is it something that you practiced yourself, or is
Absolutely.
that,
I could not have gotten and accomplished the things that I've done without support from my mentors. And that goes all the way back. I've had great mentors throughout all of my training. Obviously, we remember great teachers in high school and before that, great mentors while I was an undergraduate, encouraging me to pursue science. And then when I was at Duke as a medical student, again, a phenomenal chair of surgery, David Sabiston, spent a lot of time with medical students and just really one of the things that I just cherish is I've just had the opportunity to interact with so many great surgeons and mentors. So David Sabiston, when I was a student, he would meet with the students every week when I was on service, and he would know all of our names. It was amazing. And then he would have a get together once a year where all the students in your class were invited to his home for like a reception. No name tags, 100 students, knew everyone's name and knew something about you too. And just a really high commitment to students. And I also worked in the lab with Kim Lyerly at the time too, and he was a fantastic mentor. So I, I can't say enough about being a Duke medical student. It was really, really um, a profound influence on, on getting me to think about academic surgery and all those things. So then, obviously, I um, pursued surgery, and at the time, I was interested in surgical oncology, and Hopkins had an individual track where you could match in the surgical oncology from day one. So that I was very interested. So I matched in that track being a surgical oncologist. And so I knew I was going to do some form of surgical oncology. And I remember in this track, you were committed to do 3 years of research. So it was a 9 year track with 3 years of research. And then I remember meeting with one of my advisors, Greg Bulkley, who, again, a great mentor, but advised all the residents on emergency research. And at the time, I was on the endocrine surgery rotation with Rob Udelsman. And he asked me, well, where do you want to do, what are you interested in? And said, well, I'm having, a great time doing endocrine surgery right now. And he goes, because he went through the spiel, I'm going to have you meet with multiple people. And right when I said, he goes, all right, I know what you're going to do. You are going to go work in Steve Balin's lab for 3 years doing endocrine oncology research.
Okay.
I'm going to call him right now and say you're going to work in this lab. And I said, okay, I'll do the full intern. I said, sure, that sounds fine. And so then it began my research on medullary thyroid cancer, working with Steve. And, I tell the story when I met with Steve Balin, another one of my great mentors he said, we're in the hunt to find the gene that causes multiple endocrine neoplasia. You should join our team. You'll be famous. And so I said, yes, sign me up. And then, of course, a year before I start, Sam Wells
Yeah.
Groups discovers the gene and lost my chance to become famous. But I ended up committing the 3 years of basic science work in his laboratory, learned a tremendous amount. And then, great mentors, Rob Udelsman, at the time, Martha Zeiger in endocrine surgery. Keith Lillimo was program director. And of course, John Cameron, was a great um, mentor, inspiring us to, pursue academic surgery and to become chairs, to become leaders in academic surgery. And, there are too many mentors I had at Hopkins to really name everyone. But again, a great environment for me to learn to become a surgeon, scientist. And then when I finished my training, I looked at a whole bunch of different jobs, but the one that stood out was the one at Wisconsin because they said, we want you to become a surgeon scientist. We'll commit to it. And, Bing Rickers, basically, I knew that he would take great care of me, my family, and my career, which he totally did. I mean, opened up so many opportunities for me as a young faculty member, and even as I ascended to senior. And again, the guy that had tremendous impact on my career, along with John Niederhuber as well at Wisconsin.
So, the many people tell the story of David Sabiston and the medical students, and indeed not just Sabiston, but others like that, have that personal connection. And depending on who the person is, there's often a description of, people who have a little set of cards on the individuals so that they know about them when they meet them. Let me get the cards out, and about
Mm-hmm.
their family and kids. There's a spectrum of leadership abilities ranging from the naturally gifted to the more intentional, working at it, making sure that you do remember, that you do know. Which were you? Were you somebody who just had a natural flair for connecting with the human beings, or is it something that you had to teach and train yourself to do, or what's your what's your thought on that?
Well, I think that going back, I used to be much of an introvert when I was younger. And I remember I could not speak in public very well at all. And in fact, then when I even went into college and in medical school, I was a horrible public speaker. But then, I sort of decided if I have an aspiration to do all these things, to be a great surgeon, a great physician, to, communicate with people, I had to be more comfortable in those settings. And even my wife and I joke about this all the time because my wife is very outgoing. And she says that I'm very outgoing when I'm amongst other surgeons and people that I know, but I'm not so much if I'm around like her. I was a photographer, so if we're at an art event and stuff, I am not. I sort of revert back to maybe what I was before, a little more of an introvert. But well, I tell people this all the time. You sometimes have to push yourself, right? And so I do in those settings. I push myself. My wife compliments me if I talk to a bunch of artists and stuff like that. And but I obviously fall back to like where it's comfortable speaking to other surgeons about surgery and stuff like that. But I do think, if to lead well, you do have to relate to people, communicate, and find some commonness. And so the more comfortable you are about speaking on a broad variety of topics, and obviously you have to be a great listener too and stuff. And those are things that take practice.
Yeah.
And so I would say didn't, this is something that I've definitely practiced, my whole life at becoming better at.
And you've mentioned more than once there, ambition and vision, and you did have aspirations to um, succeed. Was it always the plan to be a chair, for example?
Well, I think when I was as a young faculty member, I was very interested in building a lab and building a clinical research program too and stuff. And what's great is people would give me advice, um, my mentors, and then people that I just met along the way. And for me, it was wanting to make an impact. But I always tell people why I went into academic surgery is that as we know, surgeons have a tremendous impact on patients' lives. But as an academic surgeon, not only can you have an impact on the patient in front of you, but you can have an impact on the patient that you'll never meet.
Yeah.
And so what I was trying to do is think, well, will I have the biggest impact if I focus on the research and become, um, to do the best work in endocrine surgery and endocrine oncology to make an impact? Or will I make a bigger impact if I become a chair? And so those were things that I did think about what pathway I wanted to go. And what sort of convinced me along the way was and I tell this to a lot of young people when I get a chance to speak about, how do you decide, what to do with your career? Is what's so great about surgery is that we can do so many different things, right? We can do research and clinical, we can do administration, we can do education. There's so much stuff, and you don't have to do it all at once, and you can have a focus at different points of your career. So definitely when I began my career, I was very focused on my research. And so that's what I spent most of my time. And that's what I thought most about. When you have moments in your day where you can sit and think, I was thinking about research, in the beginning. And then it shifted to, I was thinking about, patients and building a practice. And then it shifted to think about when I started to take some lead administrative positions, like the vice chair of research, and then I was the division chief for general surgery eventually. Most of my thoughts came about how do I help this person? How do I get this person, help them get funded? How do I help them get into this society? And so when I found myself, thinking about doing those things, I said, well, then I should take the path to become a chair.
Yeah, I've interviewed in this a couple of surgeons who were chairs and uh, but have did subsequently move into what you might refer to as mainstream politics. For example, I interviewed Norman Williams, who became president of the Royal College of Surgeons of England, and after that advised and continues indeed to advise the government on various issues. And the concept there being, as you said, you as a surgeon, you help the patient in front of you, but with research you can impact on the lives of other patients. And of course, in mainstream politics, the theory being that you can impact the lives of millions, by influencing policy and implementation science and stuff like that. Have you ever been tempted to wander into that territory?
So it's interesting you asked because, yeah, after being a chair, you often get opportunities to either go the route of like a CEO or a dean or stuff. And I have recently taken a part-time role as a senior associate dean for academic affairs at UAB, but um, and so definitely something I've thought about. But to be perfectly honest, the what sort of drives me and what I really, really enjoy is I love training and mentoring. I love training residents. I spend a lot of time with our residents. I meet with our residents at least once a week. I lead a conference, and um, I love training fellows. We have an endocrine surgery fellow that I love to operate with and advise. So those, any of the jobs that you describe, like the dean or that takes me away from that. And it's and then I love leading surgeons, and I I've sort of come to this realization over the last few years is that I love the job I'm in, and I think if I were to do something different, I wouldn't be as happy, and I because it's what I really enjoy. Now maybe that will change, as I mentioned, as you go through your career, you may change what you enjoy and stuff like that, but I really, really love being with young people, helping their careers, inspiring them to do great things. And so I think that I will
Stick at it for the moment.
definitely.
So that the job that Sabiston did, the job that Cameron did, the job that Bing Rickers did, has may have the same title, but has naturally evolved and changed to be different to the job that you do. Um, you know, the Sabistons and Camerons of this world, were they may have been great leaders, but they were feared and all powerful and all of that sort of stuff. Do you think the job of a chairman nowadays is better than the job that they did, or what do you think about that? I mean, you do find some chairs bemoaning the fact that their main role is, signing the flu vaccinations, etc.
Right. So the job is of chair has evolved to where the chair of a department had significant independence to do things, that they had the huge ability to put resources to drive things that they were interested in seeing move forward. And definitely not like that as much today. In fact, a lot of chair jobs, some people describe as middle managers, where you're answering to a budget and doing all this stuff. And so with any job, there are parts of it that are not that, can be not that attractive. But I'll have to say is, my job at least, um, in our institution, chairs really have a lot of say. We control our own budgets. We are able to be innovative and start new programs and fund them. And so I think there are still chair jobs which are really, really good that you can do those things. And I'm just very lucky to have one of those positions.
What, what
So,
what's your leadership style? How would you describe it? I mean, there's that famous slide with the pictures of the different leaders, Bill Parcells and Dwight Eisenhower, etc. Different styles. Who are you on that scale of leaders?
well, I think that, we read in fact, I just wrote a chapter. I've written a couple few chapters on leadership styles. The most recent one, Melina Kibbe and I wrote together. And so, doing the research for that particular chapter, and then talking about the different leadership types, I would like to think, at different scenarios, you have to deploy different leadership styles. I think the one that I probably um, use most often is the charismatic leadership style or the transformative leadership style. I try to get consensus. I try to lead with a group. Um, I try to communicate a lot with people and get the sense how everyone feels about. But again, as surgeons, we're very comfortable making decisions too.
Yeah.
So when a decision has to be made, we got to do it. So deploying all those styles, I think, and that, I think it's important if you're to be a leader to learn about all those styles and then recognize which ones you favor to know what. And we are very big into doing leadership assessments at our institution for both the residents and the faculty. We do disc surveys and a whole bunch of stuff like that so people can learn more about themselves and what their tendencies are.
And
But
did you, I remember maybe 10 years ago, you describing the leadership mentorship career development program in Wisconsin,
yes,
which was, I think a beacon of good practice, etc. Um, and very intentional and articulated and laid out. Is that something that you brought with you to UAB?
oh, definitely. I think that um, the practices we did at Wisconsin. Now, part of the mentorship formula at Wisconsin was set because that's what was required by the university, as they have had a long history of requiring assistant professors to have mentoring teams that include people outside the department. So, when I came, I did bring some of those ideas with us to UAB to make mentorship stronger. And now being in the dean's office, we just deployed um, a system for all faculty at the School of Medicine. And, similarly, we actually collaborated with Wisconsin in doing so. So, yes, I think, as we discussed, mentorship is so important. And so you have to have some structure for it to make sure at least there's some mentoring plan going on. But, a lot of mentoring is not necessarily so prescribed. It's like sometimes interactions that an individual will find, they'll find mentors along the way. So
So early in your career, as you say, you were focused on building a practice, your research, the search for the gene, um, and then at least to the outsider, more recently, you've developed interests in the mentorship side of things, and also diversity and inclusion, etc. Um, uh, your background is, I guess, of an immigrant background, not you, but your folks or your folks or your folks like me. My actually, I'm the immigrant. Um, but is that something that, you grew up in the Midwest? Is that something that you were very conscious of all of your life, or decided, there's all these groups, the American Asian surgeons,
mhm.
etc., and various groups. Is that something that you were passionate about from the very beginning?
So this is a great question because this is a topic I'm very passionate about now for sure. And I tell a little bit of this story. I gave a presidential talk now for the American Association of Endocrine Surgeons, where I talked a little bit about my growing up, because growing up in a rural town in Wisconsin, I was the only basically Asian in my class, and I think you know, and I described, when I was growing up and stuff, I was teased because of my race, and um, to the point where I really wanted to just blend in with people. So I really, when I was young, sort of de-emphasized
Yeah.
my Asian origin and tried to reject a lot of it and tried to be just a regular, American. And so definitely growing up, I was not one that wanted to recognize my culture at all. And then when I went to college, I obviously now was surrounded, in California at Stanford, surrounded by other Asian Americans. And at that point, sort of more started to identify with my being an Asian American. But it wasn't until, when as going through academic surgery and sort of seeing that, Asians make up about 20% of surgeons, and seeing that there were no like Asian role model leaders in American surgery. I mean, very few Asian chairs. Certainly, at the time, um, when they looked at this, Don Nikiyama wrote a paper about this. There hadn't been like an Asian officer of the American College of Surgeons. It's just, in fact, there's only been one now. And there's never been an officer of the American Surgical Association that's Asian. And there were so many, went down the board in this paper and listed all these organizations that had lacked. So then we decided, a group of us, that, part of it is that we had to become mentors and have mentoring options for Asian American surgeons, and to try to develop a pipeline of people. And then also, part of it is willing to put yourself out there for a leader, willing to. So there are seven of us that form we're founding members of the Society of Asian Academic Surgeons. In fact, I'm wearing their vest here right now. Um, in order to provide a group or a society that um, would help mentor and teach leadership skills, and um, to other Asian American faculty and others. So started the organization. We have an annual meeting now, that's very, very robust. And in fact, we have a leadership course that we have now. We just ran our second one, the Executive Healthcare Leadership Academy, we called it, and it's held in Birmingham. We just held it a couple weeks ago, um, in order to really provide skills for anyone now, that it's open to anyone to attend, who wants to move forward and get skills to lead in surgery.
Not so open to anyone, as in not just Asian
Not
surgeons.
just Asians. No, I mean, the registration fee is lower if you're a member of the society, but anyone can join the society. And in
Right.
fact, we've teamed up with the Latino Surgical Society, and they participate in the course. They send people to the course. And what's been great is that, in starting SAS and seeing it grow tremendously, where there's so many members, it's been a great opportunity for me to then interact with other diversity societies such as SBAS, LSS, and do things together. And in my also role as the editor for the American Journal of Surgery, we just happen to be the journal of the LSS and SBAS as well. So what sort of came out as a desire to help um, fellow Asian American surgeons who probably had some of the same experiences I did growing up, is now turned into really a great collaborative where we, promote diversity in all of surgery.
It's interesting, that I'm staring at your background, uh, a picture of a cast of thousands, which I'm guessing is not laid out in chronological order, from top to bottom. The reason I say that is as you know, we both walked down the hallway of the University of Rochester, and that history that goes down the corridor there of all the residents. And you're at least halfway, three-quarters of the way down the hallway before there was a woman, and then anybody of color, et cetera, et cetera. So the world has changed, very dramatically. And your background there, pictures, is a very diverse, ethnically and gender, et cetera, et cetera. But it would look different, I'm guessing, if it was done chronologically. Is that a fair point?
Yeah, I think with all you look at all surgical training programs, especially, and even surgical faculty, the makeup of them has
Yeah.
dramatically changed, over the years, to become more diverse. And, I point to where, like our residency is now 75% women. And so we're really in, which is great because I think that we want definitely the most talented people to go into surgery, no matter what their background is. And I think, obviously, in the past, some people didn't consider surgery.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, but, I think we're doing a better job of, you know, teaching students and others that this is the best profession.
It's one of the better jobs. So, just to pivot a little, it's always struck me that you were worryingly organized, is a term maybe. Um, I remember, I think one of your recommendations is, in your Outlook calendar to ensure that you have, all the family anniversaries and, important dates and uh,
Yeah.
et cetera, and all of that sort of stuff. So there must be stuff that you're bad at. Like, I mean, if I asked I mean, your wife has commented that perhaps, given the social circumstances might not be your favorite, but there must be stuff that you're not very good at.
Oh, definitely. There's tons of stuff I'm not very good at. Um, so, I'm a horrible endurance runner. Like, it's, so I tend to stay away from anything that requires significant endurance. I can't stand it.
Now, you'd have to define endurance here now. As to,
Yes.
I mean, is that more than a half a mile or?
Well, like I have never been a good long distance runner, long distance, anything long distance I've never been good at. But now, like if I'm at the gym, I can do some stuff for like 30 minutes or so, but I'm not like someone that can do it for hours. And that I'm not good at. I would say that my wife says I do not have great taste in art and like uh aesthetic stuff. She used to say that I didn't know how to dress myself or I didn't wasn't good to uh, pick clothes. She says, I sometimes don't have the right manners and all the other things. But definitely there are things. I although I love golf, I'm not like a great golfer, and so there's definitely things that. But whether or not you're like good at, I used to be worried about how good I was at something before I would did it. But with time, I've just become less concerned about how really good I am at it, right? If you enjoy doing something
Sure.
and you want to take some risk, um, in doing that, like we have a boat that we like to go out on. We dry dock a boat about 30 miles from our house. Like do on an app, I tell them to drop the boat and we drop it, we go up there. And I was tentative to do. I grew up water skiing, so I did that. But I was tentative to learn how to wake surf and wakeboard. Um, so finally, my wife said to me, I'm driving most of the time and trying to give people tips. She goes, "Why don't you do it yourself instead of telling other people how to do it?" And I said, "All right, fine." And so pushed myself, learned how to do that. Not as good as her, but I'm not bad. So I do think that as surgeons, um, we find, we're asked to be really, really perfect, right? When we're operating, we've got to do, and so we're taught you can't accept less than perfect. But in these other things, you have to sometimes say, well, I'm not perfect, but I enjoyed it. I'm just going to go do it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that's what I've changed in my sort of thinking is that, I'm more apt to try to do something and embarrass myself and stuff like that than I probably was before. but I think by doing that, you set a great example for others, saying,
Sure.
don't you got to fail at things a lot before you succeed.
So you've quite a number of years before this is relevant, but maybe this is going to form part of the historical record. But what do you think your attitude will be towards retirement? Will you are you going to be the chair for, you're coming up to what, a decade? And
Yeah, almost.
so are you going to be the chair for the next 35 years and retire
Mm.
when they prize your cold dead hand away from the or are you going to walk away and go wakeboarding for into your dotage? People varied wildly in this uh, particular space. What sort of person are you, do you think?
Well, I think that we have seen, sometimes surgeons, particularly from maybe previous generation, they devoted so much time to their job they didn't have many other interests, right? And you've probably seen that where someone is coming to the end of their career but they don't really enjoy doing other things. So that will not be a problem with me because I have a ton of things I like to do and hobbies. So I like to stay
Such as
busy.
what apart from the wakeboarding,
So obviously doing wakeboard, wake surf, and water ski. I downhill ski.
huh?
Love to downhill ski. I play tennis. I play golf. I now have played up pickleball. So trying
Hasn't
to phase through
everybody?
that. Yeah. And so we do like to stay active. We go on hikes and walks and play all these different sports. But we also like we like I have a bourbon collection, so I like collecting bourbon, drinking bourbon. We like high-end food. So this week at the Academic Surgical Congress where I'm at, I'm eating at all three two Michelin star restaurants in DC.
Huh?
Um,
Mhm.
Love to travel, so we just went on a trip with our children, their significant others to Japan for like 10 days, and so I won't. And if you talk to my like my faculty and residents, they know that I have a lot of hobbies and interests and stuff I like to do.
And when do you think it'll be? Will you? I don't know if UAB requires you to step down, but assuming it doesn't,
No mandatory retirement age at UAB, but I'm right now at a place where I can do my job. I enjoy, I love my job, and I can do the things that I enjoy to do for fun, and I have a balance between the two. And sometimes I'm a big proponent of sort of mixing work and play where like I take the residents boating. We do a lot of social things with groups that blend work and play. I think that at a point, when I retire is when I want to be you always want to be effective as a surgeon and a leader. And if I'm not being effective as a surgeon and if I'm not being effective as a leader, I should probably stop doing that.
sure. But does that mean somebody has to tell you that
Well, I
you
think
or should it be hey, give someone else a chance?
Well, I think that, with for instance, like operating, love to operate. And there may be some, maybe I'll get some arthritis or something will happen where I just can't physically do it as well. And part of it is that you have to realize that,
Yeah.
but hopefully you have partners who will be honest with you and saying, and maybe it'll be a transition where I operate left, or maybe I operate with my partners for a while, whatever. So that part has to transition. As far as leadership, I think, your term as a leader, you have to be engaged and, keep pushing things forward. And when you stop doing that, it's time to step down. So,
Yeah.
or you have someone else that's, you know, more talented that can do a better job, and then you have to step aside.
Are you a fan of term limits, whatever the number might be?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of because that is like a number.
Sure. Yeah.
And sort of like how we're moving to like with EPAs and education and training to setting, looking at entrustability and looking at ability as opposed to just fulfilling a number. So I'm not, someone can still be very effective at 10 years. Some people aren't effective after 3 years.
Sure.
So really, I think you want to look at what the job is and if you're still, being effective at that job. So, I'm not a fan of the term limits because I've seen people that are still stay effective, but I do think there has to be, an evaluation, right? There has to be over a period of time that you get assessed to make sure you're doing that. And that's one of the things, although we have no mandatory retirement age at UAB and no mandatory time you have to step down, we do have a review
Sure.
periodically. I have an annual review and then, I have a longer one after a period of time. And so I think those are important.
Yeah,
But you do have to make some plans, right?
there's no perfect answer, is there? I mean, there's not a one size fits all. So in the just the very few minutes we have left, I'm going to ask you some much more or much less stressful, but perhaps just as significant questions.
Yeah.
Um, and there's no real right answer to these, although perhaps I might have an opinion on that. Um, 2 Michelin stars. But what's your favorite food?
So I have obviously being Asian, I do love Asian food, but I think if I and my friends joke on this all the time, if I make a restaurant reservation, it's usually at an Italian restaurant.
Okay.
So I have a great love of Italian food.
Uh,
Uh, so I'll say Italian and then Japanese. So in fact,
okay.
tonight is Japanese that we're going to. Last night was had Japanese influence, but I have an Italian one coming up though.
Okay. What's your favorite holiday vacation destination?
Ooh, that's a great question because we've done some fantastic trips recently with our family, and so many good ones. Like we just went to Japan, and that was a great trip. But we've had some great trips in Europe. Love going to Italy. That's what great. Been to Australia a lot. We just came back from Tasmania, and that was a great trip too. But I would say, I have no. My goal is to like
Global.
travel globally everywhere. And so I would say, there's some like I think Cape Town is one of the most beautiful cities. And I've just had the good fortune. And I'll encourage other surgeons, as surgeons, we have the great ability to travel with traveling fellowships that many societies provide. And that sort of got me and our family going to travel when I was younger. And now we just continue it. So but I would say that the trips that we have every year, like we have a ski trip every year, we have a couple beach trips, and so we do quite a bit of
Good amount.
traveling.
Mac or PC?
I am a PC person, but an iPhone person too. But I use a PC.
Uh, uh, Covering the bases. Beatles or Stones?
Oh, I like them both. I would have to say if you look at my playlist, there are probably more Beatles than Stones on it, though.
Um, Football or baseball?
Football.
And if you had to make a decision and you were not a surgeon and it was a dream that you should be something else, and you don't really have to have the skill sets, but if magic could occur and you could be something else and it wasn't a surgeon, what would it be?
I would say it's funny. When if someone people have asked me this in the past, and I've copped out and said scientist, but I don't think that really. I mean, that's part of what we do. But if I was going to do something totally different, I'd be a travel agent.
A travel agent?
I love I did mention this is one of my hobbies. I love to make to plan things. So like we have do an annual golf trip. We've been doing it for 21 years. I do everything with it. I book everything for it, all the meals and stuff like that. I will plan out, like I've got all the restaurants booked for this week. I had that done way in advance. We we plan trips, as I was mentioning, where although I work with travel agents, a lot of times I will outline exactly what I want in my itinerary. So I've often thought if maybe in retirement, I would think of doing that even of planning stuff. And people have told me, oh, you should like offer your services to plan this. So I really, it seems like silly. It's like I still make my own flights. I just like doing that. I like getting on the site, finding the right plane, and it's like,
I'm pretty sure that what I said earlier on stands true. I'm pretty sure you're worryingly organized. It's slightly disconcerting. So tell me one thing that people won't know about you.
well, they probably don't know my like desire to be a travel agent. That's they probably don't see that hidden.
That's a career, by the way, that doesn't exist anymore. So,
Well, it's hard, right? It's just like the photographer career. My wife's a photographer, and she jokes that everyone is a photographer now with an iPhone. So it's like that's a career that's gone by the way.
yeah, everyone's a photographer with an iPhone and not having 36 images on the film. That's the big thing, because when you don't run out of film in your camera, you just keep pressing.
That's
So
true.
one thing we don't know about, I asked Justin Dimmick this, and his answer was that he didn't take notes in his lectures. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Used to when he was in Hopkins, he doesn't take notes in lectures. He knits.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's an interesting. So I did not know about that.
Yeah. So can you
Wow.
can you match that or
Can I
beat that?
produce so well? I'm not sure because I don't knit. So something that people don't know about me. Hmm. I am pretty. Well, probably most people don't know that my favorite singer is Sarah Bareilles.
Okay.
It's not exciting as being a knitter. Um,
Yeah, although I'm not sure that many people describe knitting as it's not like an adrenaline sport. Um, so,
no,
but
it's
it'll do.
not.
It'll do. So, well, Herb, I really want to thank you for you're a busy guy, but certainly busier than me, and I appreciate you spending the time. We'll these go out every 2 weeks, but it's not going to go out in the next couple of weeks because there's a few on the list, etc. And I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, this has been a lot of fun to talk, John. Great to visit with you. I love your background there too. I love your studio there.
Well, it's just that's my foolish habit and hobby. Um, so if only this one requires to drive other people's cars. So, but it gives me something to do in my dotage. Um, all
Well,
right.
this
Well,
has been
thank you so much, Herb. I appreciate it. And when I do release it to the outer world, I'll send you a warning so you can lock the doors and close the curtains and switch the lights out.
sounds good. All
All right. You take care.
right, thanks, John.